What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy's Album Club. I hope you're having a great Wednesday and surviving this crappy heat. Someone needs to mute their
I fixed it.
amateur hour. I hope you're all doing well. Jim, good to see you. How you doing?
You're doing good, man. Good to be here. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Kellen, hello. What's going on?
What is up? Oh, I'm tragically sad. I will not be attending the legendary Fat Camp that is upcoming, so I will be. It's sad. It's sad I won't be there, but hopefully in spirit.
Hey, Charlie, what's up?
It's an exclusive soiree for a chosen few. You're not there today. This time, it's.
You would have to be an honorary fat campion because you don't have the tonnage that the rest of us typically do.
Yeah, you're a little stringy.
Okay, well, you're saying I got some potato chips and dip to work to do before I can join. Okay,
extra dip.
Yeah.
Run less, more dip. DJ, what's going on? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us again. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've come to the realization, I think, that I probably shouldn't eat White Castle hamburgers anymore, but I digress. So we go.
Probably, yeah. Noah's got your back. He's another fat camp guy, and he's going to eat Kellen's burrito for him. Yeah, we're here. Oh, crap. I forgot to grab a, what's been playing. Did anybody else do that?
I did.
Well, I suck. I'm going to go grab that. And Jim, talk a lot. I'll be right back in 2 seconds.
Talk a lot, Jim.
You're muted, Jim. Just
Yeah. Oh, that's fine too.
Yeah. I've been spinning this Stone Cold classic here. This album is absolutely amazing. As I'm sure most of the people who watch the show have listened to this. I don't know, man. What can you say? I mean, this is just devastating, just riff after riff. The Rev's vocals, I think, are flawless on this. I gave this guy at my local record store, who typically has very little metal, like a list of things that I would buy if he ever got them in. And now he's starting to get a bunch of stuff that I like. And so this is a first press. It's a white label promo.
Nice.
It sounds fantastic. And yeah, I'm super excited.
I will admit that's another band that I was kind of a late bloomer to. I didn't get into them back in the day. I didn't really care for them all that much, and then the last few years have been kind of re-experiencing some of their early stuff, and they're really digging it a lot. So kind of, I don't know, evolving tastes,
Right on.
Yeah. I love their first four records. They're just awesome to me. I like Mike Howe's vocal too, and I mean, there's so many riffs on here that have been stolen by other bands, like Beyond the Black. I mean, Slayer actually stole it off of one song off Season of the Abyss. I can't remember. I remember what song it was, but I remember the first time I heard that song on the Slayer album. I'm like, dude, they're taking it from Beyond the Black. Like, what the hell? I'm like, why does Slayer need to steal a riff? Like, what the hell? But anyway, awesome.
Right on. Kellen.
All right. So I was on last week with Marty doing him and Jurgen doing an episode on sort of nostalgia, and I kind of cut it off at a certain point in time. This is another record that I was thinking about pulling, and I've been listening this past week. This is Arab Altar's debut.
They're good.
2008, by Honor. We'll be talking about some pagan stuff a little bit. This is very much in a well-established kind of pagan sound, coming from Scandinavia. But what can I say? We're waiting for the cooler weather to arrive. This is definitely aiding the process for me. So, Arab Altar's debut by Honor.
Nice. What you got, TJ?
Well, I finally I scored a copy of this. Finally, the Asphyx Necroceros, awesome. And I got, look at this. Look at. Do you see the pop-up cover? Do you see it? Tell me that isn't freaking badass.
Your gatefold gets a chubby. I like it.
Look at it. Mock all you want.
That is pretty
freaking
sweet.
rules.
Does it scare you every time you open it? Like, oh, I forgot it was in there.
Makes me happy, is what it does. Look at that.
Did you get the fluid filled record too, or is that?
Oh man, I looked and looked and looked. I think they made like 25. It was some separate record company that did it, and so there's like it's like a green fluid filled record. I was just like, oh, I gotta have it, but no, I couldn't find it. So I tried. Yeah, but this is great. This is fixed. It's what can I say? It's awesome. Van Drunen's vocals. There it is.
My money is on TJ will have that pop-up broken by Christmas, everybody. I'll put $50 on that.
No, see, because you don't have to open it to get you just leave it closed. And
what's the point? What's the point of having it then if you're not going to open it?
Every once in a while, you just be like, look at how cool it is. See how cool it is? You put it away. And then you just put it away.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I got a package from Jacob from the Upside Down Church YouTube channel.
Yeah,
he changed it. It's that, right? This is one of the first things I've spun out of it. Soul Disillusion. This is Winter Contemplations. I can't hardly read with my stupid old eyes. It's an EP. It's kind of has an older Catatonia vibe, kind of depressive, deathy kind of doom. It's pretty good, man. I've spun it a couple times. It's got the right vibe to it, and it's not it's a little more blackened, depressive doom type of thing than it is death. But I liked it. Pretty good, atmospheric. The album cover kind of sizes up the way the album feels. It's a good record. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Jake. And tonight we are here to discuss the 2008 fourth album by Athens, Greece's Kawir, however you want to say it. Ophiolatreia. Ophiolatreia, I think.
Oprah's fat labia.
Exactly. And a little bit about the band. The Wikipedia page is really kind of poorly written. I don't know. Kawir is a Greek band from Athens and Attica that is among the oldest bands in the Greek black metal scene, as well as among one of the oldest in pagan metal. Kawir was formed in 93 by band leader Thurtonax, aka Mentor, after he left Zemiel. They're awesome. They're awesome. Previously, he was also played in Nocturnal Death. 93, the band released the Promo 93 cassette. It goes on, talks about all the releases. We're not going to do that. Style and subject matter. Musically, Kawir can be attributed to the Greek black metal style with the keyboards typical of the genre, but throughout the combination of metal atypical instruments with, in contrast, raw electric guitar sound and text in ancient Greek, which is unusual in the Greek scene. The band approaches pagan metal through epic tendencies, the use of non-metal instruments such as flutes and acoustic guitars, and lyrics about pagan cultures. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of writing here. It's kind of, you can tell whoever wrote it, maybe English was not their first, which is fine. And but we're here to talk about this album. First impressions on Ophiolatreia. We'll start with you, TJ. He's been real tight-lipped on this one, so I usually get a precursor what's to come at band practice. I did want to say that this band has 9 full-length albums too. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
So, I didn't listen to it. No, I'm just kidding. I listened to it. No, I listened to it, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a copy of it with the song title breakdown on it, so I just got to listen to it on YouTube from front to back. So my information, I'm a little stunted with some of it, but I also so that I'm missing some details from my commentary tonight. I've decided that we should also take a moment to remember just 5 days ago we lost an American treasure, Jimmy Buffett, and he passed away unexpectedly, and so I've got 5 exciting facts about Jimmy Buffett. And
oh my gosh, this crowd is so ready for that.
but there's more. See, I also have 5 facts about Greece, but I screwed up my notes. So what I'm going to end up basically doing is I'm just going to kind of compile the information, and you get to decide which part of it's for Jimmy Buffett and which part of it's for Greece. So
Cool.
we'll just move along. So first impression of this, it's Greek. It does remind me of Rotting Christ a little bit. For my part, send the hate to at bineroon@aol.com. But that's what it kind of struck me as, but it's good. I think it's better. I like this better than that band actually. And I got a digital copy of Dead Poem. I used to listen to that quite a bit. I like this more than that. I wasn't actually expecting to like it quite as much as I did. And did you know that Jimmy Buffett is the largest seller of sea sponges in the world? So just I don't know. You figure it out. Anyway,
I think that's correct. By the way, I think you're right.
Okay.
I've heard that somewhere. I don't know. Color me a little surprised that you like this. He's been so tight-lipped on this. He's like, I've got my notes. We will talk about this on Wednesday. I'm like, oh, well, wow. He's gonna say like this sucks, but no. Anyway, I was fishing today and he wouldn't tell me. Anyway, Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I spun this the first time without looking at Metallum. I'd never heard of these guys before, and I was kind of thinking, I was like, it sounds like a youngish raw black metal band experimenting with pagan sounds. And then I look at their history; they've been around since '93, so that was kind of a surprise because it sounds like. How can I say this? I expected, for a band to have been around that long, like a little bit more, a little bit better sound writing and a little bit better production. Now, it's one thing to be raw black metal and to go for that, but if you've been around for 30 years, I kind of expected a little bit more of a progression. I was really surprised to see that this was a very, oldish band because I don't see a lot of growth there. And that combined with the fact that these guys sound like Norway in the 90s and not like what I like the Greek black metal, like Rotting Christ, like Varathron. It is kind of funny. I think these guys aren't really a part of like what most people think of as the Greek black metal sound at all, even though I think they shared one member with Varathron at some point. But yeah, so a lot of I would say first impression is some confusion, and but there's some highs and lows that we'll get into later. But yeah, that's what.
Color me shocked once again. So we'll see if we can get a hat trick here. What did you think of this one, Kellen?
So I was familiar with Kawir prior to this week, but I came in with the sort of Iron Bonehead 2016, I think is their first release with the label. So much, I think it's 8 years after this release, 8 or 7 years after this release. So I guess I knew what to expect to some extent in terms of the ingredients that they're playing with here, kind of like the mission statement for the identity of the band. We are a Greek black metal band, but we're kind of doing this more traditional pagan Scandinavian style. Somewhere in between the two meet and you get this sort of band and their sound. That being said, it's an interesting history in regards to, I think they're a case where, and we're going to get into this, because Marty's got a question for us upcoming, where they do not sound, to Jim's point, they do not sound to me like a Greek band.
See, I didn't get that. I didn't get that really. Hey, go ahead.
At least in the iconic way that I associate with the Greek sound. So we can get to that later. I think, though, they have honed in on their sound, their identity, in a much better way later on in their catalog. I actually am going to side a little bit more here with Jim in terms of they sound on this record to me a bit more like they're in negotiation with what their sound is. So,
Right on. For me, the reason why I picked this album, I found my old iPod that I used to when I worked years and years and years ago for a t-shirt company. I used it every day. So charging it up, it actually still works. Put it on, flipping through, and I just stumbled upon this on my iPod. I'm like, oh, I haven't spun this in a while, and kind of blew me away. I'm like, wow, it was like a time capsule. Shit, I was listening to what is it, 10 years at this point? Ugh. Been a while. And listening to it a lot this week. First impression, I think this is kind of an overlooked classic from 2000, early 2000s. When black metal itself was drifting away into more, it seemed like, especially in Scandinavia, the big bands either got a little more technical death metal or they went more electronic and weird. Yes, I will agree that there is a bit more of a northern symphonic black metal spirit and feel to it, but the melodies and the riffs, the way they play the riff lines, it still strikes me as very Greek. It just has that stamp on it for me. But I think this is a great record. Yeah, and my question: the Greek metal scene clicked late with me due to not really connecting with unique character traits its extreme metal scene possesses. The bands always sounded different from what was happening around them. The climate, culture, architecture, and even mythology stood on its own when compared to the rest of Europe. Do you think this seemingly insulated existence was a hindrance when looking at what was happening in the Greek scene during the 90s? What are your thoughts regarding the sound and style? Kellen, we'll start with you.
So I don't necessarily think it's a hindrance, but the Greek scene always, to me, was almost like a master's class to some degree in black metal, at least when you're learning to consume the content, because what the Scandinavian scene did for so many people who were initially getting into the genre is it codified it in a certain way that made the Greek scene a little bit more challenging or complicated to get into, because it completely threw out the rule book to a large extent for me. So like the Greek black metal album in my mind is the second full length from Necromantia.
It's a weird, cool album. The first album kind of sucks. But anyway,
right. Like this is the one where, unlike Rotting Christ or Varathron, they push the envelope, I think, more than any other Greek band. This album is weird and occult and experimental in all the right ways. And in that regard, I think it stands out as a testament to what the country had to offer with black metal. And the reason I bring that up,
but even that record you held up is super unique because it's two basses. I don't know that there's any guitars on there.
It's two basses, but I think the sound, I think what you're going to go for, and we'll agree a little bit here, Marty, is there's the melody to this album is uniquely Greek to me. It doesn't feel like they're writing necessarily Scandinavian riffs and melodies and harmonies. So there's a warmth to this record that feels uniquely Greek. And I think that was always like to your point in the question, a climate, something that was regional that made up a sonic vocabulary for the sound. I just think in terms of where is a hindrance, I think it always lent the region as sort of like the next thing in line. Same thing could be said with a lot of, you picked the Master's Hammer release. You look at like early Samael, like those records don't sound exactly the way that the Scandinavian scene did, that the Norwegian scene did specifically. So while they're definitely venturing into pagan themes, and that way they kind of borrowed something that had been established in a way that I don't think of Rotting Christ or Varathron being in the same way. Like this is clearly a little bit more in the specific pagan style that almost seems like a gift from, you know, Viking era Bathory. Like, I think that's what they're pulling from. They're just sort of switching the themes to talk about something that historically very Greek. They're explicitly Hellenic in terms of the lyrical content, the imagery. You look at the album artwork, it is super Greek in terms of where they're pulling from in terms of inspiration.
Yep.
The sound is just a little bit more complicated. So I think they're a band that got better over time, but to your question about whether it was a hindrance, I always think it made it a little bit more complicated for you to get into the Greek scene as opposed to the Scandinavian scene, often, or people who are getting into the genre. Black metal in this regard for me is just as much a feeling as it is a sound. And I think that kind of makes it a bit more complicated when you're sort of getting into the sound or the scene.
All right. Good points there. Jim.
I'm kind of a later arrival to black metal in general. I didn't start listening to the 2000s, the early 2000s. And it was only probably 5 years later when I started listening to Rotting Christ, after I got into what we think of as black metal, which is generally second wave Norwegian. And when I first heard it, it was jarring because like the riffs were, there's a lot of like trad metal riffs in like Rotting Christ and Varathron, and and that with some like kind of familiar types of arrangements, but it's just overblown with like shrieking black metal vocals, occult and dark and satanic themes. And just an atmosphere is really what it's about. The Greek black metal has a very distinct atmosphere, and I loved that combination. Even though it was surprising when I first heard it. I didn't expect, because I was like, okay, this is Greek black metal, so I just expected to have a variation on that theme of like the Norwegian sound, and it isn't to me. When I think of Greek black metal, I think of Rotting Christ, I think of Varathron, I think of Necromantia, and Thou Art Lord too. I'm a huge fan of Thou Art Lord. But yeah, I guess sticking to the question, do I think it's insulated existence was a hindrance? Maybe, because its riff style was so very different. Like, thematically, the music was the same. You look at an album cover, you hear the vocal delivery, very similar. But I think the riffing, again, I think it has a more of like a traditional or like a thrash kind of a style, but not thrash in the way that it was like it would be only like 2 riffs a song in Greek black metal and Rotting Christ, but to be played over and over with simple keyboards over them with a repeated melody line. Everything was repeated, and so it became mesmerizing, and that was what for me makes Greek black metal what it was. And so maybe for people that were really into what was coming out of Scandinavia, like me, it was a little jarring to hear, the riff style, that approach from the guitar standpoint, hard for them to digest. But for me, it made that, even though it was surprising, it was less of a barrier to entry. It actually helped me ingratiate it more into my listening habits, because I love all that old stuff that influenced like riffs you'll hear on Non-Servium and stuff like that. So yeah, so for me, it didn't have like a sort of like a siloing effect, but I could see how it may have felt that way to maybe the cult crew proper that is really looking for all the tenets of the Norwegian sound, the tritones, the more open chord style riffing that has a a kind of a punk sort of like right hand technique, left hand technique, and from my perspective, but most of y'all are right handed stuff. Now, one thing I will say, in context of Kawir, that's what's strange to me is like it's the inverse. Here's a Greek metal band playing what I thought I would hear when I first heard Rotting Christ or Varathron. They're playing what I consider to be like a Scandinavian style. You know, I mean, it's very open chord. It's very pagan. It's very Bathory. And so it for me, it just doesn't have a lot of that Greek identity. It's not bad, but I feel like it definitely more aligns itself with what was going on further north than further south.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, so my take on this question is not going to be quite as deep as these guys because I don't listen to a lot of black metal, so you guys are drawing on opinions, and I'm listening, and I'm like, yeah, and like thinking about like, you know what, the Bathory, they're like, yeah, I hear that in there, and the Scandinavian influence and stuff, I see it, but for me, I'm looking at this, it's like, okay, they're Greek, so my first thing is, okay, well, Greek bands are weird by default, period. So that's my opinion. They just have a sound and a tone and a take that's just uniquely their own. But I think that's kind of true to be said. Like, you go to bands that, you get way over into, the former Soviet bloc countries and pushing into Russia and the Russian metal bands and French bands, they have their own spin. And, for the Greek bands, I look at that and I feel, to my ears, it's like, well, they're drawing on traditional influences. They're drawing on folk songs and traditional things, interspersed with they love Bathory and they love, whatever from the early days of their influences, and they draw on all that. And that's why they sound Greek, and so that's always been my kind of take on it. And whether or not you like it or not, because it's like, and the only real Greek bands that I really, it's like Septic Flesh, but they're kind of Sumerian era. Yeah, that era versus their kind of, I don't know what you want to, early.
It's kind of dreary death metal beginnings, kind of.
Yeah. And I just, I did, but the newer stuff, those two records, we were just talking about this the other day, weren't we? Union and whatever the other one, I really dig those. And then I stumbled across another band called Black Soul Horde, and I actually been meaning to bring that record to the club. You got Kellen has it. It's freaking, I just haven't bought it because I couldn't find a US distributor. But I've been a little bit more. Yeah, that freaking record rules, man. And it's for what it is. It's Greek, but it's got some power metal to it, and I don't know, but it's not power metal, so don't get your pants in a wad, Marty. But yeah, and it, has it hindered the Greeks? I don't know. Does any band drawing on very influences stylistically from their culture, is it a hindrance? I mean, I think it sets them apart. I mean, most, any of the heads that are in here that listen, they have any depth of knowledge about music. I mean, even for me, that doesn't listen to a lot of, there's certain things I don't listen to. It's like, but you say Greek, I'm like, oh, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And to my opinion, for me, it's like, well, it's going to be like anything else. Let's spin it and I'll tell you what I think, I know I'm sure there's some people that get excited about, the prospects, like, oh, it's a Greek band. I'm down, but for me, I was like, I don't think so. I mean, and for these guys, I'm with you, Marty. I put this on. I hear the Greek sound. I hear it now. I
hear the northern stuff too, but
I do.
The way they're playing the riffs is very Greek to me.
Yeah, there's the sense of melody,
melodic choices.
Yeah. It's to me, it's Greek. But then with Jim and Kellen bringing up the others, it's like, yeah, you know what, because it's not going to be immediately something that where I would draw from, to think of like, well, where is this coming from? Where are they coming from with this stuff? So, is it, I don't think it's a hindrance necessarily. It would be anymore for, French bands or anything else. If they do what they do well and people dig it, I think people are gonna feed on that and gonna want it, like anything else. it's but they definitely, you know, Greek bands are unique, and you know, I say they're weird by default. I mean, it's just me, you know, busting their Greek balls, so to speak. But it's they just sound like, you know, nothing sounds like Greek bands, you know, to me. They're just the ones that do, they just, you know, they sound that way. And to that point, I will also point out, number 2, Jimmy Buffett trivia with Greek trivia mix, my lousy notes. When Jimmy Buffett would meet you, you wouldn't want to be offended, because he'd pay you a compliment and then he would spit.
Oh,
And there
thank
it is.
you.
Figure,
For...
so, you know, I don't know. It's my notes are a mess. Just, you know, look, Google it up. It's all good. I don't know.
You know, Kellen, in this comment here, you actually, Macabre Omen and Nocturnity, if you combine those two bands, it would probably sound like Kawir on this record. Because I mean, Nocturnity, I've got all their records, and they're very northern sounding. I mean, they're the Greek band that kind of embraced the Scandinavian black metal style a little bit, but still they had the twist of Greek in there. For me, after I wrote the question, I got to thinking about it. Was it a hindrance? I think the hindrance thing was, I think the Greek scene would be regarded a lot differently if it had a better, had more backing at the start. You know, the big bands, obviously, Septic Flesh and Rotting Christ, they're the two that blew up, exploded. They went on to bigger and better things. You know, bands like Varathron are still together, putting out great records, but it was a long, slow burn for them. And bands like Necromantia, they kept going, but it was a slow burn for them. And you know, back in the day, you listen to that. I think the reason why I didn't like that stuff when I was hearing it back in the day, it was, you know, not the best production with a drum machine. Typically, I mean, Rotting Christ had drum machines, Varathron had drum machines, probably the same drum machine, to be honest. They probably shared it in the rehearsal room. And then the wider distribution net. I mean, a lot of that stuff came out on what, Unisound, which, man, that stuff was kind of hard to find. It just was. And so I think the hindrance of their location was basically the support structure they had. I think the industry was so gung-ho for the northern climate bands, and it kind of left a lot of the Greeks, I don't want to say in the dust, but slower to develop. They had to take a slower lane. They didn't get the fast track lane like the northern bands may have. But as far as the sound, I think it's very interesting, because if you look at a lot of these, you know, the era was going on, there's no internet. So, you know, guys in Rotting Christ and Varathron, they're writing back and forth with the Scandinavians and tape trading, but still there wasn't such a wide influence. They were kind of developing at the same time differently. And, you know, to TJ's point, talking about the culture influence, you know, you grew up listening to these, you know, nursery rhymes or whatever, you know, you hear these melodies stick in your head. Just every region has its own form of folk music, and those melody lines might be a little bit different. The Greeks just had this influence that was unique to them. And once one band get going, of course, all those bands within the scene are going to start feeding off of each other. And it's all based on that folk sound at the core of their, you know, what they grew up listening to. So
well, look at what, like with In Flames and Just a Race, you know, those guys took you know, their folk music from their culture, turned it into melodic death metal, and then 10,000 bands grabbed it and ran with it, you know. Yeah. And it's very much the same kind of, you know, circumstance with them or anybody else. You know, these bands, they come across this sound and the style, and it's regional, it comes from their culture, you know, and it's cool that they do that. They take that stuff, because you look at, like, you know, we're gonna get some polka stuff going for the Polacks, you know. I mean, that doesn't work for everybody, you know. Yeah. I mean, you know, so it's I don't know, it's cool that they managed to pull something out of that and bring something that's, you know, they can share with everybody in that regard, you know.
Yep. And what was I going to say? It wasn't until I heard some Greek stuff early on and never clicked with me. It wasn't until Triarchy of the Lost Lovers. There's something about that album. It clicked with me, and it made me go back, and I heard all the Varathron. I heard His Majesty at the Swamp and Walpurgis Nacht. There are other stuff with a different ear. I'm like, once it was like the light switch was on, I mean, that I guess that's why Rotting Christ was the one that got to run with the fancy ball, into because they took the sound and moved it forward. But yeah, anyway, anybody have anything else to add on this before we get off this topic? All good? Let's discuss the musicality and composition of Ophiolatreia. Ophiolatreia.
Oprah's fat labia.
Jim.
Yeah, I do think these guys make a lot of cool choices. The opener, Moire, it's kind of raw and ugly at the start, which I like raw black metal, so I was kind of digging that. And then, it's interesting because as the song sort of progresses, it becomes what the rest of the album will be, which that heavy layer of melodicism on top of it, that heavy sort of Vikingness sort of rears its head, and so and I do think that there's some cool like individual contributions that the members make that are interesting. The vocals are pure black metal, what you expect. They're really intense. The guitars are kind of open and kind of space filling, and the drums are in your face. To me it's very much like a raw black metal kind of a sound, but with like a heavy dose of pagan style keyboard. Yeah, there's definitely flute all over it. I don't know if that's real or a synthesized flute, but it's there. So a lot those all kind of combined, to kind of keep it more in that pagan realm and less so outside of like the presentation, if you will, than for the raw black metal. I do think it's a cool combination. I just feel that there's some awkwardness in throughout the record in terms of like when they make transitions. I feel like there's a little bit of kind of fumbling, between the changes and stuff, which if the intent was to be raw black metal, that's a tenet of that genre. It makes total sense. And I do think that some of that's intentional. The kind of like dungeon synthy Casio style keyboards, that's another tenet of like the raw, the underground sort of black metal sound, and I don't have a problem with that. I like that kind of stuff. I just kind of wonder, again, like as I referenced earlier, with these guys having so many years in the bag, is it still like an intentional, hey, let's just have 4 to 8 tracks, let's just like do this in 1 or 2 takes, let's not really worry about in some cases if our guitars have good intonation, which we'll get into that later on one song in particular. Is that intentional, or is that like, a more of a laissez-faire attitude that they have towards, their development as songwriters and musicians? Because it's such a long period of time, 1993 to 2023. Are you still really trying? The question that kept coming up in my mind in regards to their composition and musicality is, are you really still trying to be raw black metal, like intentionally making these choices where it's almost got that punk attitude? It's going to just be dirty and imperfect. Or is it just like a lack of concern about, taking all those years and kind of honing, your musicianship and song and your songwriting? I don't know. I don't know where that lands. And I wish I did know, because it would really affect my opinion about, the composition and musicality. Because on one hand, I like the layering. I like the combination of the raw elements with the pagan elements, and that Bathory feel. I like the guitar sound in particular. It reminds me a lot of The guitar sound on Bayless, the Burzum album, that guitar sound. There's definitely several moments on this record that really remind me of that. But then when I look at the other side, it's like, well, but is that weird, time change in the second track, where it almost sounds like it's falling off, and then the next tempo starts. Like, did they mean for that to happen? And I don't know. If they were a newer band, I would think that it would be a combination of youth and a combination of like wanting to be raw. But being 30 years in, it has me wondering. So it's in the eye of the beholder here, for what you are. But I'm in this really kind of gray area with this band where I don't really know, whether I should be praising it or being a little more, critical of it. So, but I will say, that I'm not trying to slam it. I do think that, there's nothing on this record that is off-putting to me. It was a true black metal listen, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there wasn't anything that grabbed me and like made me really feel it. So that's kind of where I landed on not just the musicality and composition, but the album as a whole.
Right on. Kellen.
So I'm gonna agree here mostly in terms of, or echo Jim's sentiments. And I think part of my criticism is where this band is in 2008, meaning like there are just two other examples here. So the most striking one I mentioned earlier, I came for show and tell tonight. I don't have random combination facts of Grease and Jimmy Buffett, but I do have some records to show.
I came prepared.
Okay.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay. Well, if I get spit on and complimented, I'll know where it came from.
So the Macabre Omen rules.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
This is Macabre Omen's debut full length. Comes around in 2005, I believe. And to me, this is a record that does not have the same level of sort of 1 foot in 2 different directions that I feel on this Kawir record. If you want to go for like an all-out pagan, like this is Moon Sorrows, Kaivan Kantaj, I believe is how you pronounce it. But like this record sounds like there are 20 people playing at one single point in time, right? The stage sounds massive. These records by the 2000s, whether you're talking about a Greek epic style or a pagan style, they're so well fleshed out. Like those are giant achievements. And at some point, this band feels to me like they have 1 foot in Forgotten Woods, and 1 foot in Riding Christ. And I think that's for me the major source of criticism.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, actually. That's a good comment. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think I agree with Jim. There is an element of sort of Norwegian aggression in terms of the sonic characteristics. It does not have the kind of warmth that I'm used to with a Riding Christ record that's slightly pulling from a little bit more of a traditional heavy metal melodic sensibility. But I love the mission statement, though. Like this band, what they were doing, what they got started in 2003, trying to do something that was so explicitly pagan, I think is a really cool thing. And there are a few moments on this record when they absolutely achieve it. They haven't, like, I don't think have it nailed, but I love the inclusion of sort of choral chanting vocals at time. There's some acoustic passages. There's a really interesting sort of harmonic quality. I'm interested for 2 guitar players to chime in here, because the way they sort of scaffold and layer different guitar parts on top of one another, I think are really interesting at times on this record. It just brings a different kind of melodic characteristic that you don't find on like a Hades record, right? Like I love that record. I love, we talked about it at length, but that's so clearly pulling from a Norwegian kind of pagan Viking style. This is a totally different animal. And to their credit, what's interesting though, is they carved this space when no one else was doing this in Greece. And I think that's noteworthy. I do want to say though, like that is what I hear here, is a little bit of that Norwegian raw in nature kind of deal that I mentioned with Forgotten Woods, and a little bit of that like Riding Christ style. The vocals are so explicitly black metal. They'll fall in place. There's no confusion there. It's what to do with this sort of slightly warm yet scathing kind of sound. They haven't quite figured out how to maximize the pagan influences on this record, but when they do come in, they are a welcome addition. And I think if you are a fan, or you're at least curious, look at the following releases. We'll get to my closing thoughts here, but the records that follow, I think, actually improve this quality with the band.
All right, TJ.
I found, to me, it seems like they rely real heavily on a lot of repetition in these songs. They tend to get a lot of mileage out of their melodies and out of their good riffs. And they build because
the good riffs are really strong hooks.
No, they are. No, absolutely.
That's why they're getting mileage, because those hooks they're unbeatable.
No,
they're great.
And that's it for me. It's it was I found it. I enjoyed it. They really had a lot of really good ideas throughout the entire record. There's no real soft spots musically on this for me. There's a couple little dings. I think it was near the end. There was kind of that put your back into the oar chant thing they were doing, or whatever it was. Whatever. But it didn't last long, and it was kind of. And then once the rest of the song kind of kicked in, it was like, I guess it's not too bad. And then they do get into some kind of quasi anthemic kind of structures, where the songs really kind of soar, and it sounds like a marching cadence or whatever. They get into that a little bit, but I imagine that might be topical, or it might be they might have pushed the song in that direction to try to achieve a more specific point in the entire song. But whatever, again, they're dings. They're not really criticisms per se. I was just kind of like, I'm not crazy about that. But the songs overall, again, like I said, I didn't have any way to really break these down till today. I pulled up a song list, and I'm like, well, I don't have a stopwatch, so I'm just gonna wing it. But yeah, I think the fact that they were relying on that, and just kind of building the songs off that, I think it really worked for them in this record. I think it really it just achieved the end that they were going for. And again, when the material was strong, it didn't, what's the fault? There's nothing wrong with that. And then there's so much melody in here, and then the occasional kind of angular, angry, typical black metal riff will come in. There's one song near the middle that's like really fast, like through the whole thing. I don't know what it's called, but it just kind of those riffs were a lot more aggressive and scathing, and then everything else being with the canned flutes and all the other stuff. It and it worked really well. I think it's really strong. Some of the and again, another, like, some of the dancing keyboard stuff was a little I don't know, I didn't care for it too much, but again, it's not really anything terrible. And then there was a couple of spots where they use these really, really harsh timing changes where you're kind of, the song's zipping along, and then it was just like, wow, and you just drop right off, and they totally shift gears, and it's just kind of like, it was a little unsettling, but it picks right back up so quick, you forget about it and move into the rest of the song. So by and large, I don't have any real criticisms about any of that stuff. Just kind of 2 cents.
You got a lot quieter.
Did I?
There you go.
That
Yeah, that's better.
my pro gear over here. Anyway, you can tell how invested I am in all this YouTube stuff. So just if you ever question my commitment, but yeah. So I don't. I enjoyed the record, and So I don't really, just there's kind of little things here and there. I can't pick it apart as well as you guys can, because I don't have, I don't own all these other bands, and I don't listen to all these other bands. So I'm kind of coming at this kind of really kind of raw, and my expectation being it's like Greek black metal, oh, Rotting Christ, so that's what I know. And so compared to that, I like this more. I like this a lot more than I liked Dead Poem, quite a bit actually.
So that's the only Rotting Christ you've heard?
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of the other ones, like the one before and the one after. I don't remember the names of them.
The one before was Triarchy. So yeah, you've heard that's a good one. Yeah, that's good.
And I have like I said, I have a digital copy of Dead Poem. But yeah, for that, it's just kind of I definitely like this better. So as far as that one record, anyway. That being said, did you know that around 7% of the world's marble comes from Jimmy Buffett?
Damn, I didn't know that. That's great to know. Okay, for me, the musicality and composition. Getting refamiliarized with the album this week. I'm trying to because initially my first impression this week was I can see how the pace of some of this record is going to maybe be a challenge for TJ. It might seem like it's dragging, but why do I love it so much? My buddy Zoller pointed out that I always tend to write in the black metal realm. My better riffs were always in the 6/8 time signature. It's kind of like a triumphant march waltz type of thing. I love it. I love it in the music, and this album is filled with 6/8 triumphant kind of march waltz, and I love it. It's just in a time signature that really clicks for me for this type of music. Having said that, the band does break it up quite nicely. They start off right away with a mission statement. It's kind of a blasting, not like blast beat. Hold on one sec. I'll be up in a minute. And broke my train of thought. It starts off with a blast beat, gets the album going, but then quite quickly shifts into a more atmospheric, airy vibe, which a vast majority of the record lives in, which I really like it. I really like it. Jim said that it's kind of like a chintzy synth sound, but for some reason, the way this thing is mixed, well, we're going to get into the mix here next, but it's just a very airy, lofty feeling about this record. There's something about it. It sounds like they went into a good studio. They had a budget. I think the record sounds great. I like that nasty guitar tone, but it's still clear. Everything on here is clear. That bass line, the bass line's cut through the mix. Fantastic. He's offering these like counterpoint bass lines, which are really nice. It just brings a nice touch. I think the songs, there's a few tempo shifts here that, TJ's point is a little awkward, but for the most part, I mean, we've got 9 tracks that flow along quite well, centering on the 6/8 crawl, but then, there's definitely intensity shifts throughout. So I think it's a well-paced, well-written album. I really like the twin guitar work is really nice. The melodic weight of this album is very dense, which I really like. And I just love these playful riff lines, man. That to me is the Greek thing. It's just very melodic and it flows a little bit. It playful sounds like a dumb adjective but it just the way the riffs, they're shifting between the beat. It's just so good. It's kind of uplifting in a way, which and I know another thing. It's another no to say with black metal. It's uplifting. Well, I mean, the riffs just have a lot of life in them. And energy.
Actually used that exact phrase in my notes, Marty, for Topalis, the sixth song, the sixth track. I said the keys are uplifting here. Yeah, I mean, so I completely agree with you. They do.
Yeah,
and I think that's an accomplishment for this style of music to make you feel that. And so, I take it back. I said at most moments I wasn't feeling anything, but on that song in particular, I did feel something. Like I felt like I was, empowered right there. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I great call out there. Great adjective.
Right on, right on. And another thing that's really cool is it's very heavy-handed dose of melody, as I've stated numerous times, but they maintain that I don't want to say, is it Norwegian or more Finnish? I hear a lot of Finnish black metal on here too. Just the dissonant, how they throw in the kind of a dissonant snarl
You
and
get
some
that
of
with
the
the
chords.
rawness of it is definitely
Yeah.
Finnish, yeah.
Yep, they get the riff lines. They'll throw in the dissonant chords on occasion, and then but over the top soars. Either the keyboards keep a very simplistic melody line, or the guitars themselves, and it's just the constant is the vocals. Other than he goes into like a chanting thing, like a clean to say this is pagan, but the harsh screams. I never got tired of the lack of dynamics because his voice is good, and the music underneath it, what he's decorating, is so. It's so good. It's so the music itself speaks louder than the vocals. The vocals are kind of like the traditional unwavering point of the album, but I still like it because I like harsh vocals like that, and he's got a good voice, and they break it up. They break it up really well. I don't know. I'm going on and on. Anyway, production. Kellen.
There we go. So I like the production on this record. I will some to say a little bit. It mirrors my thoughts on the songwriting, though, where I feel it's a little bit of that warm side, a little bit of the harsh stuff. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. The lower end of this record, though, so bass presence, into sometimes I feel there's almost an inconsistent drum sound. Now that could be I don't have a physical copy of this, but I felt just listening to here on my system, sometimes the kicks felt thinner on some songs versus others. That was the one point of contention I had.
Maybe
Right.
they recorded the drums at different days or different intervals, or
Right, like whatever. Someone kicked the kit or a mic, and then they
Bumped a
reset
mic,
it.
yeah.
Whatever. But that was the one thing that I felt was slightly holding the production back. Is I would have enjoyed somewhere from kick drum bass up to sort of the guitar region to have a little bit more presence of life. The sort of ancillary or tertiary instruments here, so like keys, whatever, flute, things like that that exist underneath the guitar work, I feel are a bit recessed, and I think that's to the benefit of the record. I don't think they dominate the presence at any one point in time. So I thought that was a good thing. Outside of that, I don't have any complaints here. I just would like a little bit more warmth to the sound to drive home sort of the melodic characteristics. But outside of that, I thought a well-produced record.
Jim.
So, production-wise, it's all kind of linked to how I feel about the record as a whole. I think the production, when this album is really being harsh, when there's that that raw black metal feel, that finish feel that Marty was alluding to, where the vocals are kind of laying on top of the instruments, the guitar's buzzing underneath, the drums are blasting, like that works in that box. And then the pagan production, when those tempos are there, those riffs are there, the keys and the flutes and all the other folk instrumentation are doing the layering. That all works. But my issues with when it comes together, like I feel like that it kind of starts feeling disjointed. It's like, do I want, again, like I kind of my theme tonight, am I raw black metal or am I pagan metal? And it's okay to do both, but I think the way, at least on this record, I am curious enough about Kawir now to want to know where they go from here. But on this record, it feels like it's two different bands trying to figure out their sound, and in the context of each song and even the context of the production. Like, it's a good raw black metal sound when it's raw black metal. It's a good pagan black metal sound when it's doing that. But when it's together, like, I feel like it's kind of, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It's almost like a bit of an identity crisis, with the production and the songwriting. And so I'm kind of left in the middle. one of the, controls in our experiment, if you will, tonight has been a comparison to Macabre Omen. I think Macabre Omen, absolutely a Greek metal band that's been heavily influenced by Bathory and
Very much, yeah.
Viking metal. Absolutely, there'd be no Macabre Omen without Bathory. That said, I think that their execution of Viking metal is very, very crafted. The crafting of that album is on point. Like it is, yeah. The way that these guys, take those influences, I mean, they really make them their own. And I think that the songwriting, the production, all comes together. It all gels. It all makes sense. And the identity is one of confidence and power. And I can listen to, Gods of War over and over again. I really, really love that record. And, but I never got a feeling from that there was a disjointedness to it. I never got a feeling like, we're trying to get these realms together in one space. And that's what I feel like with the album as a whole, and also the production. It's like they're, the raw black, maybe Scandinavian Finnish black metal, trying to push in with like the Scandinavian pagan metal. It's all competing for the same space, musically, compositionally, and sonically. And it makes it kind of tough for me to figure out like where I land as a listener on it. When it's all in on one side, like Poseidon is like almost all pagan folk. There's very little of the traditional Norwegian raw style there. But on the other hand, its Nemesis is the most aggressive black, and it's like almost pure, no pagan, just straight raw black metal. And those are my two favorite songs on the record, because one is a definite statement, like this is pagan, this is, Bathory influenced metal. The next song is like, this is raw black metal. And I feel like they're good at those two realms, but just kind of, maybe stumble a little bit when they're trying to push it all together.
All right, TJ, production.
I thought the production was really good on this. I liked how it's really cold without sounding thin. It still has that, that point of sonic aura that the black metal bands are so they want to achieve so much, but I still think that there was a lot of life in it. The bass even creeps in here and there. I think there could have been more bass in this. You're welcome, Jim. It would have been nice to have heard that a little bit more in here. There are moments when the mix does get a little wonky, but I think by and large, I don't have any real complaints about it. This style of music, what they're playing, the air, all the air and the breathy riffs and all this stuff. It kind of is what it is, and they may, it's discernible, it's audible, it's there. You can sit and listen to this, and you pick up the songs, and that's what and it just kind of backtracks to composition. But it's one of the cool things about this is you can kind of glom onto these tracks and get into them and kind of get swept up in them. You're getting going along with the melody and stuff, and then the repetition of it and stuff, and it's really cool. But production, yeah, I mean, I really don't have a lot of any real criticisms about that. Here, this one might be right. The official name of Jimmy Buffett is the Hellenic Republic. No, I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I know
that's the name of his restaurant franchise.
That I don't know. I didn't have time to fix the fact check. I told you my notes got messed up, so I don't know if that's right. But it's there. I don't know. Look it up. Jimmy Buffett.
For me, production. I really like the fact that the record has a very clean production. Typically in this style, clean, it's not always good. In this case, it like the guitar tone. I really like the guitar tone they have on here. It is a raw black metal vibe, but the production and the playing style is so well. The playing style is sharp enough, and the production is clean enough that you can hear the definition in the playing. You can hear every transition. I mean, it's really easy. I mean, all the guys here, Kellen doesn't play, but it's really easy to hide behind a wall of distortion. And that's where I like to dwell because it hides a lot of imperfection. Here, the way this thing is produced, it's just, you could, if there was mistakes, you could hear them. Production wise, I think it's great. I would say, I see what Kellen's saying. He would like a little more warmth to it. But, I don't know. This just works so well. Everything is mixed. You know, I can hear the bass. I can hear all the drum lines. I can hear all the guitar stuff, even though there might be one or two different other guitar layers over the top of it. I think it's really mixed well. It's got kind of a unique production. It sounds like they had some money behind it. And I will say, I forgot to mention this in the songwriting thing. The synth and the flute stuff, I like the fact that they have it mixed. Like the synth stuff is there. It's audible, but it's kind of low in the mix, which that is fine because that is what gives this album its bit of atmosphere, the space. It makes it feel a little bit more mystical. It makes it kind of look like the day that these guys are standing in. You know, it's, I don't know, man. I think they really knocked it out of the park on this. The only other album by them I own is this one, which I think is the one before it. I want to say it's Aria, but it's R-I, I guess, A-R-A-I. I haven't spun this in ages. I don't know what it even sounds like, but I think the production on here is great. It highlights the music on it well. The difference between it's got a good mix between traditional instruments and the black metal side of it. I think it's a 9 out of 10 production for this. It could have been a little more dense, maybe. Sure. Let's talk about least favorite songs. Jim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned it already. Poseidon, that song is where they really lean in, I think, front and back for me on the pagan folk. Instrumentation, songwriting, presence, and even with the awkward, you know, clean vocals that come in about 6 minutes in, like it all works. You know, the tempo is slow. You can kind of, you know, embrace it fully. And I didn't have any of that kind of wondering, like, what exactly, you know, what subgenre am I listening to here? Like, it was really clear to me, not only like, you know, what this song was, but also I think what these guys really, who they really are, you know, but you know, then the song right after it, I feel like Nemesis is a good example of their really raw side too. So maybe they should be they should be the same guys in two different bands. You know, maybe they should be a pagan folk band and a raw black metal band. You know, again, Kellen has alluded to, you know, those different, you know, tenets of their playing coming together better on subsequent albums on Iron Boneheads, on the label Iron Bonehead. So maybe it works a little better. But anyway, those two are two of my favorite songs. And, you know, because I feel like there's that separation there, and they, to me, work better when they separate those styles more so when they try to combine them. That said, we referenced earlier to Palace, track 6. The keyboards on that song are really, really great, and I completely get where Marty's coming from, and I agree. The keyboard melodies on To Palace are actually, there's an uplifting feeling to them, which is kind of a nice welcome when you're listening to something this dark and shrieking black metal. I do like the title track, Ophiolatreia. The verses have the weird talking vocal going on, but it kind of makes when the shrieking vocals come in later like even more intense. And the tempo, again, you know, it stays consistent, there isn't a lot of like crazy time changes going on, and I think they're better when these guys they're in the pocket, whether fast or slow, but staying consistent. That's when these guys have a stronger presentation. So that said, none of these, there's nothing on this song, or rather song, there's nothing on this album that is offensive to me. Like TJ said earlier, these guys rely a lot on repetition of riffs, and when they do it long enough, like on Ares God of War track 5, it can be mesmerizing in a good way. That said, my least favorite song is probably the last track, A's Empire, because there's some weirdness going on about like at 3 minutes in, kind of near the end of the song, the rhythm guitar and the lead guitar, which is playing a melody line over it, and the keyboard, like the lines just aren't working. Like they're melodic, but there's some kind of I think unintended dissonance there, and I think that maybe the guitars, like the intonation was off or something, because it sounds like it should be in key, like what the rhythm is doing and the lead is doing, but it just doesn't sound like it's in key, like it's supposed to be, but not. And if you really pay attention, maybe you'll hear it as well. So and that kind of brings me back. It's like to my original question, 30 years in, are these specific choices like we don't care, we're punky raw black metal, we don't care if our guitars or intonation are perfectly tuned, or is it like, or is it saying like, hey man, we messed up, we haven't been paying enough attention that maybe 30 years in we should have. I don't know the answer to that, but I what I do know is that tracks 3 and 4, Poseidon and Nemesis, I think are their best tracks on this record. And yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Right on. Kellen.
So favorite tracks, let me see where this is in the album. So the second track, Ray or Meter Theon.
Ray is what, yeah.
Yeah. That song. So what I have here is, it's the first time we get like well executed choral vocals on the record, which I think key hallmark for a pagan black metal listen. The riff that closes it is also like perfect, that balance of black metal and traditional heavy metal that I think exemplifies the region's contribution to black metal. And I mean, there's like some swampiness as well. So right there, I think the pagan and Greek stuff, you check those off the list for me. I see there's less confusion, to Jim's point about Nemesis, which I completely agree. Like that is hey, we're the raw, aggressive, here's our attempt at Sargeist kind of moment on a record, where I a little bit confused. And there's nothing wrong with that. It feels, like a little bit like a loss of identity. To Palos, I also want to say what I have listed in my note is this is epic black metal. So that's that, to Marty's, it all goes back to Man-O-War, right? If you retrace all the steps, right? But you go to Bathory, and then prior to Bathory, it goes back there. You go. Hail and hail, Marty.
Wimps and posers, leave the hall.
There
TJ.
you go.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing I love more than 5 sweaty dudes wearing cod pieces singing about riding iron horses. It's great stuff.
Every time he comes to practice on that bike,
that's a fuzzy loincloth to you, TJ.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what.
What's that one song?
This is a glimpse into Fat Camp, by the way.
It is.
That's what it's going to be.
Busting balls and getting drunk.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say the men in loincloth aisle walking around on fire.
That all depends on how much you drink.
Back to my original point, though. Sorry to interrupt the Greek guide over there and your comments about Man-O-War, but but I think that's the whole, like, the part of black metal that you're talking about being uplifting. I think other things you could potentially associate with that, or synonyms, would be something like triumphant, right? That's what feels good about a lot of that sort of pagan black metal is it's pulling from a part of traditional heavy metal's history that does that have that like momentum and sense of urgency and power, not like downtrodden despair, morose, right?
And if you think it's the Manowar vibe, I mean, that's where Bathory's whole Korthon admitted to being influenced by Manowar when he decided to go towards the more epic,
Yes.
Viking. He was trying to rip off Manowar.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at is, I mean, that's been talked about on this show. But if you go and run that, obviously is uplifting, whatever, hail and kill music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the vibe you get for me on that song, on Two Palace is one of those moments where it feels like empowering, right? And I'll also agree on the title track here, Oprah's Libido. So that song, what I have written is for me, that's all. It's very much a guitar track. It's got all these sort of haunting like melodies and synth layers to it that feel like a bit more sophisticated. But I just want to also circle back to Jim's point regarding Poseidon, because I do agree that is the direction that this band wants to head in. That gives you a glimpse into the future as like what their idea is as an ethos as a band. So I completely agree. But those I will say like the opening track and the closing track for me are the one that like I feel are missed opportunities, but they aren't bad songs. So
I know this is tough for you, TJ, because you couldn't find the track breakdown, but
so here's what I got to say. So brace yourselves. So first, I'm just gonna read a list of random Greek black metal bands so I can be cool like you guys, and then I'll just see if I can just get every band in there. No, I kid, but no, look, I couldn't break it down by song. I loved the album opens strong, it closes strong. I think the songs rise and fall in a really good way. I really like the record. I don't know if am I going to buy this? If I found it in the bin, I would probably pick it up.
You're probably not gonna. This came out on a.
Well, yeah, the odds of me. Yeah, if I ever, like I said, if I find it in a bin somewhere, it'll go next to my, Immortal records or, whatever. I mean, I enjoyed this. Not having the benefit of being able to break it down track by track. Again, I had some dings on little things and stuff, but they were just kind of like, oh, that's, kind of weird. And I don't know if I was crazy about that piece, but a lot of that stuff just kind of comes and goes. And it all worked in the music so well that I didn't really have any real criticisms of this. I did like the record. I didn't get to listen to it as much as I would have liked to this week. Because I was, busy mourning the late Jimmy Buffett, but it's a cool record. It's definitely, I'd be curious. We might have to fire up some of their back catalog out at Fat Camp this weekend. I'd be kind of interested to hear.
Yeah,
I did.
I've only heard two of their albums. I have no clue. One song came up after the album. I my final spin tonight, and another song from another record of theirs popped up, and it was the vocals were all, oh, this whatever, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? And then I was like, oh, it's the same band, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So, but whatever. No, definitely. I don't. That's what really all I can say, and finally, just Jimmy Buffett was the first person to open a community dump, and I'm not sure, but he was worth $1 billion when he died, and he wrote the seminal theme song for island dwelling tourist drunks everywhere. So we all, we can all just remember that, and right here, buddy. Didn't he also have something to do with the Olympics?
Well, let's see. According to my notes, he was the first person to win the Olympics cooking something. I don't know.
Huh.
There's something else. There's something else in here about because he was so wealthy, he could only sacrifice live animals. I don't know.
These notes have been awesome, by the way. Thank you. If I've learned a lot.
My notes are, I did the best I could. I had, limited time, so it was fine.
All right. For me, least favorite songs. I think it's kind of funny because the first two tracks on the album is basically what you're getting. It's a demonstration of what's coming for the rest of the album. First track, Moire. Fast and melodic, melody lines cut through like a knife, excellent bass sound and bass lines. It's very much their aggressive, you start strong, you end strong, and they start strong on here. Rhea, the second track, the subtle synth and flute lines heighten the atmosphere of this track. Very enchanting for me anyway. I love the minor dissonance in the guitar chords. They thankfully add a hint of tension to the guitar melodies. Some vocal chanting enters for the first time for a pagan variety and flair. Nemesis, another favorite on the album. Fastest of the album, riff verse. The riffs in the verse are exciting and full of hook and melodic movement. There's some thrash influence on this. The quick picking style is very thrashy to me. Nice synth work, minimal and haunting. Poseidon, the flute spins a somber yarn for the downtrodden intro of the song, picks up with a hint of aggression and those playful riff lines. Nice twin guitar leads. Ares, God of War, melodic journey through a 6/8 waltz. I love that. I love that 6/8 time signature. Always have. Before the speed kicks in for intense dynamics. Another favorite, To Palace. I love the 6/8 time signature and the triumphant movement of this song. The riffs and melody lines are fantastic. I think my least favorite, although I don't dislike the song, my least favorite is Hephaestus. I think it's supposed to be Hephaestus, but it's Hephaestus. I don't know. Blasting. He's the guy, the furnace guy in Greek mythology, right? The anvil, the smith. Is that right? Hephaestus was the blacksmith in the.
I don't have that in my notes.
You weren't. You must have been doing something else during mythology in class. As blasting synth line, the blasting song synth line seems a bit unnecessary on this. It's a good track, full of energy, but not as colorful melodically like the rest of the album. Last track, I need to go back and re-listen to that again. Jim was talking about it being a little out of key or something. Azun Pure. It's an instrumental, right? I love the mournful melody lines and overall sonic layering of the track. It leaves us downtrodden and full of wonder. They kind of ended it the same way we ended Cemetery Pass, with the mournful guitar line that kind of takes the listener out. Maybe that's why I liked it, because we kind of ripped it off inadvertently. But yeah, that's it for that. There's other than the one song, Hey Festus or whatever, I like this whole record. Judgment, final thoughts. TJ.
This record gets 5 out of 5 lamb euros.
They're delicious, by the way. That's
minus the tzatziki sauce. Just put some mayo on that lamb.
What's the point of getting a euro if you're not going to have the cucumber sauce on it? That's dumb. It's like putting sugar on corn on the cob. It's dumb.
No, it's not.
It's really dumb.
How would you know?
Because normal humans don't do so. They put salt on corn on the cob, not sugar.
Why would no? Sugar and butter, it's perfect. Because just because you don't understand doesn't mean
it's dumb. No one
right.
does it. I've never heard of that.
Everybody does it.
It's stupid. I don't. It's stupit.
No one puts sugar on corn.
You just called my mother
unless it's in a corn fritter.
Corn
fritters do have sugar in them, and corn fritters are awesome. So
sugar on corn on the cob is the best.
I learn something new every day. I think it's dumb though. Anyway,
you'll find out, won't you?
Nope. I'm eating salt on mine the way The way
Like
that
some-
Zeus
some-
intended.
Like some peasant. Oh, I'm gonna put the salt on it. Yeah, that's fine. Just do it. Go ahead.
I'm done with you, Kellen. Sugar on corn. What a
Man,
Yeah.
this may be like one of the most enlightening episodes we've done. I learned so much here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah. That being said, really like this record. This band is awesome, and I'm totally into this sound. So I would probably not have picked this out of the Kawir catalog to
yeah. I've only got 2 to pick from, and this is the one that I like the more. So,
but yeah, I mean, awesome band. It's definitely inspired me to go a little bit deeper into their catalog, and kind of pull out more records in this style. If this is I don't know if this is really a bad place to start. If you are curious and you're watching this, go ahead, check the record out. I tend to, the ones that I have heard are the later records, and I really, really, really recommend those. So, but yeah, great choice. I don't have a Euro ranking for you, but this is a solid album.
all right, Jim.
Yeah, as I've stated throughout, I've been very conflicted about this record. That door just closed on its own, which is real creepy. Yeah,
Jim's
Jimmy
house.
Buffett
Jimmy's
is visiting
here.
me tonight.
Why
Yeah,
he's
Jimmy's
coming to
here.
you though? I don't know.
Jim's house is built on
You are in Florida, and
I am in
Jimmy-
Florida. I
Yeah,
am not
so
a parrot head, which is
That's
weird.
that.
But,
That's probably why he's there and not here.
He's the house is built on a Jimmy Buffett burial ground.
in my opinion, his best song was the one he did with Alan Jackson. I like that one, 5 o'clock somewhere. But so yeah, I mixed feelings, but overall though, I kept coming back to the fact that nothing about this record, I didn't dislike anything about it. I just wanted it to be better than it was, and overall, but when it's good, there's really some really cool moments on it. So it's kind of hard for me to say where I landed on it, because I still feel like I'm kind of struggling. So I think it's only fair, with my sort of indecision, if you will, to say that I give it a 7, because I feel like it's fine, but it's just it does suffer from an identity crisis, in my opinion. I think that there's enough potential there, to maybe explore their later catalog, that Kellen was alluding to, that said he feels like it's better, and they really grew into this sound. It took them 25 years to get to 2008. So maybe they just did a lot of maybe they were late bloomers, if you will, to getting to where they were going to go. But yeah, I'd say for me it's a solid 7. I don't know what their new stuff is like. Maybe it's better, but I do think that there are better pagan black metal bands from Greece. I'm looking at you, Macabre Omen. And I think there's better raw black metal out there, from Finland. So, but yeah, a 7 at the end of the day for me.
Everybody gone? Is it just me? All right, for me, I picked it. I picked it just because, like I said, I opened up the box there, like the time capsule, and with my iPod, and this record connected with me more so than it did when it came out. To me, they're banned from the 90s, and I do hear a bit of the 90s spirit on this record, which I think is another reason why I like it. I forgot to mention that. It's made in 2008, but it has a 90s spirit to it, which I really like. And if they decided to embrace one or the other genre or stylistic trait moving forward, I don't know. We'll have to see what I think about it. I like both of the traits that are on this record, but I really just like this record. And I think it's, I like it better than some Rotting Christ records. Some that people call classics, I own. I put them on and I like them. I don't really start loving this band until Triarchy of the Lost Lovers, and the last album by Rotting Christ I really like was Theogonia. I think that's their last truly Greek ripping album. That album rules. It's really good. But Kawir, they just seem like they're kind of overlooked in the whole pantheon of Greek bands. Leading up this week, they're still playing live. You can watch them play live on YouTube. It's kind of hard to get a feel of the music because it's, video, phone probably, and it doesn't really translate. But this album for me is an 8 out of 10 record. I think it's kind of a Greek classic. No one talks about it. That's why I picked it. It's a band that I rarely see people talk about in the VC. I thought it'd be an interesting one to chew on. I knew there was enough production value here that it might pull TJ in a little bit. I know he's real standoffish when it comes to black metal, unless of course, it's Ukrainian and
His saxophones.
right, exactly. But yeah, that's it. And who's picking for next week?
Is it me this week or?
TJ just picked. We just did.
Well, then we did. Yeah, you did. So it was me. Then it was you. Then I think it goes back to Jim, doesn't it?
Was it you, Kellen, or me? I can't remember.
No, because I picked the Hell Witch.
Wasn't
record.
Hell Witch?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Jim.
Yeah, so it's
all
Jim.
right. So I got something. I've been wanting to, since this album came out, I've been wanting to spend more time with it, and I don't really feel like I have. And I think this is a good excuse to really kind of dwell on this and embrace it. It's newer stuff. Let's stay in the black metal room. Let's talk about Mayhem's Damon, man. Let's do it.
Oh,
I have not heard that record, so I'm interested.
What one is it?
Damon.
Damon. Kellen, you sounded disappointed there.
I mean, no. I was hilarious because another black metal record. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Keep lining them up.
Is it? Oh yeah. Listen, the aggravation returns. My next pick. I've already decided. I already know what I'm picking, and it's a French band, and you're gonna love it. Is that AE Damon?
I think it's AEMON. Yeah,
it is DAEMON.
Oh boy. I'll tell you right now. I ain't heard a lick by Mayhem that I give two shits about. I'll tell you flat right now. I don't like that band. I'm just putting it out right now.
Didn't we listen to D Mysterious on the way to Kentucky, and you said that you liked Attila's vocals on it a little bit?
I like Attila. I think the guy is
he's all over this one, man.
Yeah,
he's all over
that doesn't. I have tried so many times to listen to that band. And to get in it, it just doesn't.
Well, now you have to try again because you're.
I will. Yeah, I will definitely try it, Melanie. We'll see what happens. I think Attila is amazing. My favorite that Keep a Kalessin, that EP.
That's great. Why can't I remember?
I was
Reclaim. Reclaim, is that the name of it?
God, I love that so much, man. I wish that was a whole album. That shit is just because I checked out that band after, stuff after, and I really didn't.
Yeah, Reclaim. The EP with Attila is a 5 songs called Reclaim. It rules.
And
it's really good.
That is so freaking awesome. Attila is just he is just yeah, you're probably right, man. I mean, I'll give it the old college try. We'll be at Fat Camp this weekend, so we'll jam it out. We'll put it out a few times over the weekend, and but Jim, what did I ever do to you, man? That's all right. Like I said, I'm gonna make it up to y'all. You're gonna hate me, and again, just send all the hate mail to @bindroom@hotmail.com. Or whatever, Yahoo. Whatever it is, just send it there. And again, anybody who comes back and watches this, I don't mean to be. I wasn't shitting on Jimmy Buffett. I just was. just having a good time, and hopefully he would have enjoyed a couple of laughs. So don't, if you're offended, too bad. So there.
Well, and I could care less about Jimmy Buffett. And with that, everybody, have a great one. Thank you for joining us again. It was a fun time as always. Good discussion. And Friday show notes, I will be in the woods with that gentleman down there, and I would be with these other two guys too, but they have to live somewhere else other than where I live. Whatever.
Cowards, we're afraid.
We'll be in the woods drunk somewhere, stuffed full of burritos, and around a campfire trying to keep Noah from falling into it.
Burrito Holocaust.
Burrito Holocaust. For show notes, Alan will be joined by Jeff and Rick. Jeff from Gas Masks and Hand Grenades, and Rick from the Dreadful Minutes. They're talking about albums that are nearly perfect. They're gonna basically pick apart their favorite records and explain why they're not perfect. So should be a fun time, interesting topic for sure. Hey, thanks, Tim. I get it right once in a while. But everybody, we will be back next week. This gang of heathens here, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Everybody have a good one. Cheers.
Thanks all.